Hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm Krashy, and today we got to dive into an Espeon release tier list for SOLOQ. We've had it out for a while now, gotten a lot of games on it. Let's go ahead and dive in. Yeah, let's go straight into the all-rounders. First and foremost on the list is Azumarill, and unfortunately for Azumarill, I think it's a bottom tier character. Really just doesn't get a lot of work done. There's always a better option, and ultimately, yeah, Azumarill really low tier. But the same cannot be said about Aegislash, because Aegislash is easily an A tier. In competitive, it might be an S tier jungler. I just don't want to fully put it S tier because I do think that your team needs to follow up with you a little bit whenever you're playing this character. But really good jungler. I think it's an okay laner. You can definitely get it done as a laner. A little bit hard to stack attack weight stacks on it if you're playing solo queue, but as a jungler, really solid pick. I don't think you can really go wrong. Has really strong secure, crazy team fight potential, does really good damage, and is pretty tanky, so really solid pick. Dragonite is a little bit like mid tier. This character, we are kind of in a flip meta, so this character is still good for that, and in solo queue, you can still get some really good like hyper beam flip plays done, but that range nerf that they did a while back to Dragonite has just kind of kept the character like slightly out of meta, and it doesn't really have the best Unite move in terms of fighting. So Dragonite is still really good. I think that you can definitely win games on it. I mean, you can win games on anybody, but it's just not my favorite pick in the meta right now. It's a solid B+ tier. Now, Serena, I actually think, is one of the more underrated all-rounders in the game. This character has crazy burst potential and with Stomp, and can go in and, you know, a lot of the changes, meta shifts that we've seen have come from either the game getting more like flippy on Zapdos or more bursty. So you either need Pokemon that are tanky that do damage or Pokemon that do a lot of burst damage. So Serena with Stomp brings a lot of that burst damage that you're looking for. They can hit a backline character, an attacker, and do really well. So I'd say it's actually doing pretty well. Kind of a little bit underrated maybe. As for Lucario, even though it's solo queue, I still just think that this character is insane. As far as bursting goes, this character's got its E-speed, it goes crazy. If you're playing like pup close combat, you have good secure. The Unite move is great for securing objectives. If you get ahead on Lucario, you just completely stomp a game. I don't think there's been a tier list thus far that I've not put Lucario in S tier. And like I said, even though in solo queue it's not as strong as it is in like 5 stacks or competitive, it's not that much further off. So yeah, run some damage items, play this character in top lane. It's really strong. Oh yeah, and for the sake of saying, Serena, I don't really care for jungling it anymore. It was never the best jungler. I mean, maybe way back on release, but I don't really care for jungling it as much anymore. I mostly just think it's a solid laner. All right, Garchomp. Unfortunately, Garchomp has just been kind of mid for a while. Mid tier. It's like strong-ish if you can get ahead. Yeah, it just doesn't really get a lot done, really. It's so much potential of a character, but unfortunately just falls a little bit short. Unlike Charizard. Charizard is very good. This character is a jungler. A jungler. Do not put this character in lane. It is very bad in lane. Amazing jungler if you can get ahead. I do think that it just still has so much snowball potential. It's really good for that. It doesn't have like the flip potential that like a lot of characters need, or the hard secures. This is a team fight monster. You just want to try to win a team fight with this. And Machamp, I still think is very good out of the top lane. You have a great team fight potential. It can definitely burst some objectives as well. Like it has like some secure with close combat, or even the Unite move if you're just hitting that as well. So really solid pick. Still going to be sitting in that A+ tier. So I don't think I've changed much of my opinions on all-rounders at all. If anything, they're just really solid. All right, let's jump into attackers. And at the top of my list, we have Espeon. So Espeon, I gotta put it in B tier, B+ tier. This character in solo queue is just not it. I think that this character might have a lot more potential in 5 stacks because of the Unite move. You can kind of like anti-flip CC in an area. It's got a really amazing laning phase, but otherwise it just doesn't really do a whole lot. It doesn't really have as much damage as I would expect an attacker like this to have. And it just doesn't really do a lot. So I think there's a lot better attackers to be playing in lane or in jungle. I wouldn't really jungle Espeon too much anyways. You could, but either way, I don't think Espeon is super strong. As for Doralodon, I think Doralodon is actually maybe going to go up in my tier list a little bit because the game is just so flip based. Dragon Pulse is still pretty solid. You can just throw out the Unite move and just hard rip things. So it's not the best choice in the world. You can lane it or jungle it. I think it's better in jungle just because you can get the advantage and get ahead naturally. But yeah, Doralodon can do work in solo queue, specifically solo queue. Sylveon. Sylveon is an interesting one. I think that this character is not necessarily the best in solo queue, and I say not the best, it's really, really good, but I don't think it's the best attacker in solo queue, but it's really, really good in 5-stack meta. They've got this jungle split thing going on, they're getting the lanes, they're dominating, but we're not really doing that in solo queue. You got to go into lane with Sylveon's EV, with the bad Swift, you don't have a ton of secure, it's a little slow starting, but Sylveon actually performs really well in the meta because while the meta is really bursty, Sylveon has a lot of self-sustain with its Unite move and its like quick ability to move around and hyper voice and calm mind itself. So Sylveon's performing in the late game really, really well. I think it's a phenomenal attacker to play right now, but I do think that there might be some better just lane bullies. That said, Sylveon's endgame might be really good. So this is definitely like an A+ A tier Pokemon, and it's just meta shifts based on how the game is playing. So it's a little like floating the line for me. Someone could easily say A+. I totally get that. I'm just going to keep it at A because I think the laning phase is a little bit not idealistic to start off with, and there are some other Pokemon that you can just get really, really ahead pretty early with, mainly being Ninetales. I actually think that Sylveon might outscale Ninetales in the late game, but Ninetales is just consistent all the way through. Really, really strong, crazy laning phase, just consistently stays strong going into the end game. Needs a little bit of babying. Again, attackers right now are really squishy, so they die really fast. But yeah, Ninetales really, really strong. All right, now let's get into solo specific. This would not be nearly as high up on like a competitive tier list, but Greninja, and I'm gonna go ahead and do it. This pick, Cinderace, is always back and forth between A+ and S tier. Just kind of depends on how I feel. The thing is these two characters just get so snowbally in solo queue. You throw them in jungle, of course. You do not lane either one of these. You do not put these in lane, but you throw them in jungle, of course. And when you do get ahead, you just have so much residency to just take over the field. You get Dread, next thing you know, you're up at Rotom, you take Rotom, you steamroll that, like you just get so incredibly fed and just carry the game and snowball the game. So you got to go with that. Unfortunately for Cramorant, I think I just keep moving Cram up and down between these bottom three tiers. Listen, I'm just going to pull the trigger on it. We'll throw Cram in C tier. It's like got a decent laning phase and it has some potential. I don't even really know. Like the bottom 3, 4, 5 characters are just so bad, and we'll get to some of those. But Cram is just like not really it. It's like it feels like it's almost okay, but it just doesn't really get the job done. It really doesn't. Pikachu, another really, really strong lane attacker that scales into late game pretty well. But again, it's got that like late game, it's just kind of squishy. You have to just like burst and blow something up with this character. Again, I actually think that Sylveon, the more I'm looking at it, especially in the current meta, Sylveon, it probably just deserves to be up here because I think that Sylveon scales into late game maybe even better than these other two do. So let's go ahead and pull Sylveon up. You know, it's just time. But these attackers, tried and true, and another one that's going to join that list is going to be Venusaur. Venusaur can still just do crazy damage and sustain itself a lot. It's like harder for Venusaur to fully keep itself alive now and steamroll those team fights, but Venusaur has a really great laning phase. You can jungle it too, but don't really need to. You can, but really, really great laning phase, and then scales in endgame very, very well. Like I said, got to be a little bit more safe, I feel like, because it can get bursted down, but incredibly strong. Gardevoir is good, but it just isn't quite in meta. I think it's somewhere around A tier because you can still, it has Future Sight for great secures. It's got its Unite move for great Unite setups. It's probably better in solo queue than it is in 5 stacks. And it's not like any better or worse than Doralodon, I suppose. They're both just solid picks. They're definitely not the best picks, but they're solid picks. So yeah, Gardevoir, I wouldn't really lane Gardevoir. Her early, like the Ralts lane is just terrible. But jungle Gardevoir is pretty solid. It's the same with like Doralodon. They're both really solid picks. You just don't really need this Pokemon in most team comps, but pretty solid pick. Okay. As for Decidueye, I think the Decidueye is kind of going down in meta. And the main reason being it's just so bursty. Yeah, I don't know. I just don't really think that it brings as much to the table as it was kind of for like a patch there. Anything this character can do, especially like as a jungler, because you don't really want to lane this unless you're doing like I don't know, unless you're Blissey laning with it or something. Even then, I don't know. Anything this character can do, like an all-rounder can kind of do better. You just have so much tankiness and beefiness with like an Aegislash, or the ability to get super fed with some of these other 80 carries that would better perform than Decidueye. So Decidueye's fallen quite a bit. Now, the defender class, we have Trevenant. This character is basically an all-rounder, does crazy damage, is tanky, gets a lot of resets, crazy CC. It's just phenomenal. It's a phenomenal pick. In solo queue, keep in mind, defender supporter, you got to kind of, you're relying on your team a little bit, but if you're going to play a defender, something like Trevenant is going to be like a big help in getting that job done. Mamoswine is actually a nice lane bully. Again, this is like a solo queue tier list, but it's like solo duo trio. So Mamoswine pairs with like a Ninetales in lane really, really well. You do this in a duo queue, it's really insane. And this character it's pretty good. It's pretty good for solo queue. You don't really need it that much, but you don't really need a lot of defenders in solo queue at times, it doesn't feel like. So it's not the best option for solo queue, but it's a pretty strong option. It'll definitely work darn well in laning phase. Scales into 8 in end game, late game, end game, decently well. So there's Mamoswine. As for Crustle, here we are. I don't know, man. Like I said, it's not like it's the worst thing in the world, but it is. but it is. I don't know. These characters down here just don't get a lot done. They just really don't. And you know what? I'm gonna throw another one down here. At this point, when I look at the bottom like 4 or 5 characters, I almost like don't even know where to put them. Snorlax, is it better or worse than Crustle? I feel like it's a little better, but the line between these two tiers is just so small. These characters really just don't get a lot done. Snorlax just, I don't know, it brings a lot of CC to the table, but that's solo queue. And even then, it's just not the best character because it doesn't really have a strong Unite move. Crustle lost its score gimmick. It can do some damage with like Stealth Rocks and crits and stuff. You can flip objectives with it, but you can do that with a lot other characters. So yeah. And then we have Greedent. Greedent's always going to be a solo queue monster. For a defender, this character just has a lot of freedom, right? You can run around, do things, be real self-sustaining, self-sufficient, get some good damage in. If you're doing Belch build, you have Fluffy Tail. You can, flip objectives and try to secure the objective. Really, really solid character. Just amazing Pokemon for solo queuing. And Slowbro, I'm going to throw, I think I've moved some of these around a little bit. Slowbro, I'm throwing in the A tier. It's consistent, it's solid. If you're playing with friends, you can definitely get a lot done, but solo queue wise, not the best pick. I want to separate some of the best defenders from like just the really good ones. These are like really very self-sustaining, can do a lot of damage kind of defenders. These defenders are like, they're solid, they're tanky, but require a little bit more teamwork. So really, really good, Slowbro is, but not the best to pick, but really solid. And then Blastoise, I'm finally ready. This character is dominating the meta right now. Jungle, lane, top lane, bot lane, doesn't matter what you do. Energy Amplifier, SP attack specs, choice specs, focus band, buddy barrier, throw some combination of those items together. This character with rapid spin build is going crazy all over the place, going crazy, doing tons of damage, can flip objectives, has crazy secure. It's just getting the job done. All right, let's move to speedsters. Talonflame, I think, is just falling. It's not super consistent. I feel like it takes up a jungle spot because you don't really want to lane Talonflame. The flip meta, we're in a slightly bulkier meta. You gotta compare Talonflame to trying to hyper carry a game with like Greninja Cinder, to being tanky and doing damage with say like Aegislash/Charizard. There's just too many picks that are way better than Talonflame to be picked right now. It can snowball a game, it can get ahead, but then it doesn't scale into late game very well, and ultimately it just struggles. As for this speedster, Gengar, solo queue monster. I mean, this character can snowball a game almost as good as like Greninja Cinder. Doesn't scale into late game quite as well, but can really get some work done. So this is going to hit the A+ tier. Gengar is a phenomenal pick. Zeraora, struggling. It needs to come down in level, so I don't even think there's anything else to say. A level 10 Unite move just instantaneously hurts this character's potential. Its early game is not that good. Laning it feels pointless because you can't get it as much experience. This character is just struggling sheerly on the fact that it's got its Unite move at 10. It's got its like plus move at like 14. It's like this character just needs too much experience. Like the name of the game is trying to be ahead and not taking too long, I guess. I don't know. And then we have Absol. Absol's another amazing speedster. This speedster, unlike Gengar, can actually, I don't really like Gengar lane. You can do it, but I don't prefer it. I wouldn't recommend it. I definitely think it's best in jungle. Absol can actually lane really well. It lanes really well. So Absol's a phenomenal solo queue pick. You can really stomp games, get ahead, dive towers, and yeah, doesn't scale into late game super well, but it's not that bad. It's not that bad, especially in solo queue because the teams aren't quite super coordinated. Then we have Hoopa. Moving to supports, we got Hoopa. Hoopa's crazy. You know, it's, again, solo queuing, but even so, hyperspace hole resets, crazy health that you can bring to the table. You can bring some pretty decent damage with Hoopa. You're controlling the macro play of solo queue with ults, and hopefully your team will show up. But Hoopa is just a crazy strong Pokemon because of that Unite move, because of hyperspace hole. There's not much more to say. Mr. Mime has fallen quite down, pretty far, quite far, has been down for a while. Honestly, characters like Blastoise make Mime hard to play. The character still does damage, but they nerfed it. It's not really a support, so you're not really supporting the team. You're bringing like disruption support and damage, but it just doesn't really get the most done. So Mime's definitely struggling, has been struggling for a little bit, and it's unfortunate. But that leads us to Eldegoss. Eldegoss is consistent. The cool thing about Eldegoss is that this character actually brings some decent damage to the table because it's like ranged. So it's unlike Hoopa, it doesn't have like the long range, the high impact is what I'm looking for. Unite move. It still has a pretty solid Unite move, but honestly, Eldegoss is just solid. You can definitely play it. I like playing a damage Eldegoss build in solo queue if I'm actually solo queuing. If you're playing with a friend, you can still bring some nice shields and healing to the table. It's not the best thing in the world to pick, but it's really solid. Wiggly, also another character that's kind of fallen down. I still think it's good because of the Unite move. And in solo queue, you're not getting countered quite so hard by like meta picks. But Blastoise feels like it's in almost every game, so you got to be careful picking Wiggly, because if you do, you can't sing it. So maybe you have to go roll out, or maybe you just don't try to sing the Blastoise. But the Unite move is still really solid. It's just not the best thing in the world to pick, but it feels pretty decent to pick as well. And then Blissey, honestly, this character is probably contesting S tier, but that requires teammates, so I'm going to leave it at the A+ tier, but it's definitely contesting up here. If you're playing with some friends, this character is nuts. You just have to have at least a little bit of support because this is a full support character. You're tanky, you're there to support someone doing something. So if you're playing with like a friend or a couple friends, definitely feel free to run the Blissey. But yeah, there you have it. I think if you're looking for just like, I want a hard climb, I want to do the best I can, it's like A tier and up. And even then, honestly, A+ and up is just like where you want to be. The balance of the game is pretty decent, I would say. You can really play anything and win for solo queue, that's for sure. And yeah, that's what I'm thinking. So friends, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel for future Pokemon Unite content. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Like, you know, plus or minus a tier here and there is definitely how we get it done. But as always, friends, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Be sure to be kind to one another. Tell someone you love them, and I'll see you in the next video.